I've been living in my van in the desert for the past 4 years, and I've spent 2 hot seasons working as a server at the Grand Canyon. And I've been amazed at how many hikers have died or come close to it just from their body temperature just getting too hot. In fact, I have a story of a customer who came in and that I waited on that had told me that he almost died. So I'm going to tell you that story, and also the number one thing you can do to keep yourself from dying while hiking in the desert. I remember 3 years ago when I was working at the Grand Canyon on the rim at the Bright Angel Lodge as a server, and I was doing the breakfast shift, and this gentleman came in. He looked to be about 70 years old, and I went over and waited on him, and he told me, I almost didn't make it to this breakfast. And I was like, why? And he said that he'd been hiking the Grand Canyon for 30 years and that yesterday he almost didn't make it back up. And I said, how did that happen? And he said he didn't know. He said that his water wasn't working. His lips were really dry. I assumed, because he'd been doing it for 30 years, that he had, snacks and electrolytes and salt and that kind of thing. But he said, that it just wasn't working for him and he didn't think he was going to make it up. And the first thing I thought was, I said, did you pour water on your head? And he said, no, I didn't want to waste my water. And then I said, well, how much water did you have? And he said 7 liters. And I thought that was a lot, but it really kind of broke my heart because I felt like he thought he was too old, and that's what the problem was. And I'm sure that it is harder when you're older to maintain your core temperature when it's that hot. Of course, you have to have salt, water, and electrolytes to regulate your body temperature in the extreme desert heat. But what I've learned is the best way not to have to replace all that water that you're sweating out is not lose all that water in the first place. But how? Well, there's actually some good science on this. The largest study ever done about heat effects on the human body in the desert is called Physiology of Man in the Desert, published in 1947. It's still considered a landmark study to this day. Physiologist Edward R. Adolph did hundreds of tests on U.S. Army recruits in the desert. The first thing they found is that hydration is critical. Pretty common knowledge now, but maybe they didn't know that in the 1940s. Marched 2 groups of soldiers in the desert for up to 8 hours with afternoon high temperatures of 108 degrees. They'd probably never get away with doing that today. Too dangerous. One group was allowed to drink as much water as they wanted. The other group was allowed no water. The group with water finished the hike. Most of the group without water failed. But the most surprising finding is how important it is to get your clothing wet. The study found that wearing damp clothing reduces sweat-related water loss by 83%. In desert conditions, wearing damp clothing can drop your skin temperature by 20 degrees. This works because when clothing on your skin evaporates, it pulls heat away from your skin, effectively cooling your core temperature. Something I like to do is just get a bandana and dip it in water. It doesn't really take all that much. And get it really wet. See, it doesn't really even use that much water. And then before I leave for my hike, just put it around my neck. And it feels cool. Another finding from the study that really surprised me: the more clothing you have on, the less you lose water. The study showed that soldiers in full uniform lost 50% less water than those in shorts. So exposed skin has double the sweat loss and double the dehydration risk. Just ask the Bedouins. For thousands of years, these nomadic desert dwellers have known something modern science has only recently confirmed. Covering up in the desert actually keeps you cooler and helps conserve water. Bedouins wear long, loose robes, creating a layer of air between the fabric and the skin. This trapped air slows sweat evaporation, meaning the body doesn't have to produce as much sweat to stay cool, and at the same time it protects their skin from being exposed to direct sunlight. Science has shown that skin wetting with water is as effective or more effective than drinking water alone in hot conditions. In fact, National Park rangers at the Grand Canyon have recovered bodies that died of heat stroke that had plenty of water on them. Heat stroke can occur when core body temperatures exceed 104 degrees Fahrenheit, 40 degrees Celsius. At that point, organs start to shut down. Hydration helps, but cooling is essential. This isn't just about hiking in the desert. If you live in a dwelling and your AC goes out in dangerously hot weather, these same findings can help you deal with the heat until you can get the AC fixed. The best way to beat the heat in the desert when you're hiking is to hike in the early morning. It's still cool from overnight, and there's so many beautiful things and wildlife and stuff to see in the morning. I love a morning desert hike. Anyways, thanks so much for watching, and check out my other videos.